Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. We are a team of 10 first semester graduate students of urban design at CMU, and this video outlines an overview of our studio project, focused on urban placemaking in the neighborhood of Oakland in Pittsburgh. We spent the first half of the semester learning about the neighborhood together, its historical and cultural context, and further analyzing its current urban characteristics and conditions. The second half of the semester, the studio was split into 5 pairs, and each pair detailed out one of the 6 community service hubs proposed by the Oakland Plan, with a master plan scheme to integrate all the 6 into a shared network. Drawing from the lessons learned from our analyses, one-on-one interviews conducted with residents representative of North, West, Central, and South Oakland, and inputs from the directors of OPDC, Andrea Boykowitz and Wanda Wilson, and planners from PDPC, Derek Dauphin, Chris Hornstein, Ose Akinlawton, Stephanie Joy Bermudo, and Thomas Scharf. Each community service hub proposal chalks out a phased approach based on cosmopolitan localism and the 15-minute city model. We would like to acknowledge with gratitude the generous time and detailed perspectives shared by all our contributors for this project. On behalf of our class, I, Aditi, will introduce a story of Oakland, our study and analyses revolving around understanding Oakland's sense of place. We believe 3 themes, as outlined in this presentation, best describe the neighborhood. A place has a strong identity. Drawing from well-known examples worldwide, we approached urban design through this synthetic and ecological manner. What is it that draws people to these places? We asked. One of Pittsburgh's earliest settled neighborhoods, Oakland's history from farms to factories to institutions, is a microcosm of the development of the city and the region. We began to unravel Oakland's identity in the context of the city and within the neighborhood itself, and how it has been shaped by various occurrences over time. Oakland's sense of place is told through 3 lenses in this story: Anchorage, diversity, and reinvention. What makes Oakland an anchor? Oakland functions both as a residential neighborhood and a commercial district in Pittsburgh, a unique mixed-use urban place. Throughout its history, Oakland has been an economic driver and cultural center for the city and the region. Today, Oakland's recognizable landmarks, such as the Carnegie Library and Museums and the Cathedral of Learning, among others, continue to anchor Oakland's identity. Oakland is located at a pivotal point where the street system shifts course. Oakland's major streets follow historic trade routes. Forbes Avenue historically was used by the Delaware and Lenape tribes to travel to and from the East Coast. It was along the same corridor that the first highway was established by the British, which today has become an interstate highway. Pittsburgh's landscape consists of terraces eroded over millions of years from the ancient Allegheny Plateau. Oakland's geography gave rise to a pattern of land use that is part of its identity. It is a flat plain with a strong geographical boundary formed by steep wooded slopes all around, and a low-lying floodplain along the Monongahela River to the south. While heavy industry and railroad lines dominated Oakland's floodplain, worker housing, churches, schools, and businesses occupied the terraces above. With 350 businesses, over 23,000 employees, and a 3:1 employee-to-resident ratio, Oakland is the second largest employment anchor in the city. Oakland's entertainment venues and cultural events draw people from within and outside the neighborhood. Using Kevin Lynch's mapping technique, Oakland's landmarks, nodes, paths, edges and districts are identified and located in the neighborhood's spatial structure. Oakland's spatial map shows how the 5th and Forbes corridor divides the largely residential area to the south from the denser institutional and commercial zone to the north. Arterial streets, shifting block grids, institutional zones, and slopes all divide Oakland into distinctly different districts. What makes Oakland diverse? Compared to most neighborhoods, Oakland has a great mix of land uses, housing types, and building sizes. Longtime residents of Oakland have different interests than institutional administrators or business owners. For these reasons, Oakland is a contested neighborhood. Institutional expansion, large-scale high-density residential projects, and the impact of cars and parking all lead to challenging planning issues. A study of Oakland's urban grain reveals a clear distinction between the residential and institutional fabric. North Oakland and Central and South Oakland are the major residential areas, though very different in their building fabric. They are split by the commercial corridor and institutional campuses. Central and South Oakland have a small-scale pattern of streets and blocks, contrasting with the heavily trafficked city arteries, the 5th Forbes corridor and the Boulevard of the Allies. Large-scale institutional development has transformed the finer-grained pedestrian-scaled street grid into large blocks of parking garages and concrete walls. Serviced once by an extensive streetcar system, Oakland today is accessed primarily by cars. The public bus system is limited to major through streets, and walkability studies reveal a lack of last-mile connectivity in the neighborhood's residential areas. Oakland's diversity is evidenced in its variety of building types: commercial, institutional, industrial, medical, residential, and utility buildings are all located within a few blocks. With its high number of employees and students, the neighborhood has a much higher renter occupancy than owner occupancy, as illustrated in the chart. Its rental-dominated housing stock is associated with a lower quality of property maintenance, nuisance behaviors, neglect of public spaces, and parking congestion. Oakland is a complex neighborhood. The boundaries of North, Central, South, and West Oakland, although commonly used, are not as well defined as they initially appear. They are confused by different city council districts, census tracts, business and community organizations, and historical patterns of settlement. This porosity may mean that the community service hubs might be more than local service centers, particularly if they can be networked into a larger system. Oakland as a neighborhood reinvented itself over time. In each era of Oakland's history, new economic drivers and accompanying waves of immigration have reinvented its socio-cultural fabric and urban infrastructure. Oakland is a case study of the kind of redevelopment seen in cities everywhere. During the 20th century, Oakland has lost some significant city landmarks: Duquesne Gardens, Syria Mosque, Forbes Field, and the Kraft Avenue Theater, to name a few. These public facilities were cultural attractors for the region. All of them were replaced by private institutional property, and today are mostly parking lots. The neighborhood's transit infrastructure was also reinvented. For nearly 75 years in the 19th and early 20th centuries, streetcars, aptly called the citizens' passenger railways, serviced the neighborhood. The streetcar system was dismantled in the favor of the private automobile, and public transit now has been reduced to the bus network. The new bus rapid transit line will improve express access to downtown and the East End, but still leaves the local last mile unserviced. The City Beautiful movement that swept across North America in the early 20th century as a reaction to the damages of industrialism was envisioned to reinvent Oakland's public realm into a grand monumental landscape. At this time, the University of Pittsburgh was redefining itself on a 43-acre consolidated campus in Oakland. While the steel industry was declining, the university and hospitals became Oakland's major employers. Today, the neighborhood hosts many spin-off organizations stemming from these institutions. What does this story tell us about Oakland? Assessing the neighborhood's strengths, we see that it is an economic hub for employment. Its service economy is dominated by its eds and meds institutions, which, like any monoculture, lacks long-term resilience. The neighborhood needs to diversify its economy through bottom-up transformation. The low rate of owner occupancy, which has been falling further in the recent years, means there is a weaker base of long-term residents. Continued privatization of public space by large institutions reduces the vitality of the neighborhood's public realm. Oakland has seen a great number of planning efforts over the last 40 years. Some of the same issues are raised in every study, and while progress has been made, there is no widely accepted vision of Oakland's future. Our project is based on the recommendations from the Oakland Plan, the most recent neighborhood plan, which was designed and managed by the Department of City Planning. The Oakland Plan identifies a need for community service hubs to offer local daycare and career services, educational programming, and free Wi-Fi in a single location. The Oakland Plan has identified 6 potential locations for these hubs in the neighborhood: the PWSA Herron Hill Pumping Station in North Oakland, the Corner in West Oakland, OPDC Office and Zulema Park in Central Oakland, and the CSHs Food Pantry and Dan Marino Field in South Oakland. These sites are either owned by the city or by an organization providing community services. Expanding on the definition of a community service hub in the Oakland Plan, we as a cohort envision it as a self-governed multi-purpose facility that serves the particular needs of its local neighborhood. It provides an accessible platform that enhances social connections and improves the quality of the neighborhood through shared resources. We believe a community service hub must be welcoming, nurture sociocultural growth, have a unique sense of place in the community, enhance mobility networks, create opportunities for local businesses, provide a refuge during disasters, and serve as a node of a larger network of shared resources within and outside the neighborhood. A community service hub can be considered successful if it serves the needs of its local population, enhances the public realm in the urban environment, has a beneficial ecological impact, and supports itself financially. With these criteria in mind, as a class, we relocated 2 of the hubs to sites that we believed better served the intended populace, will have a greater catalytic effect on the improvement of the neighborhood, and are more appropriately sized sites to accommodate the necessary facilities. One important criterion for the sites is the accessibility of the community service hubs from their respective communities via no more than a 15-minute walk. Together, the team's proposals envision a 2-tier system of hubs, each hub serving the unique needs of its local neighborhood at one level, and also participating in a larger resource-sharing network that can potentially be linked to citywide programs and services. At this time, I would like to introduce the 5 teams of 2 students each. Aditi and Aniket, Yash and Kaushik, Shreya and Seyang, Rutuja and Yihan, and Shinue and Fangyu. We thank our studio instructor, Stephanie Daines, for her guidance and mentorship on this project. The 5 project proposals are as follows. Aditi and Aniket have envisioned Frazier Field Community Service Hub in South Oakland as a self-governed multi-purpose facility providing access to fresh food produce, building social networks, and encouraging local enterprise while improving urban quality in the neighborhood. Yash and Kaushik have transformed the Herron Hill Pumping Station in North Oakland into a community service hub that is the nucleus of a network of large public spaces. It celebrates Pittsburgh's water infrastructure and history and transforms underused land into economic and cultural opportunities for an increasingly diverse population. Seyang and Shreya have created Zulema Place, a new center for the Zulema Park District that envisions a mixed-use development around the park with a community service hub that facilitates employment and entrepreneurship. Rutuja and Yihan propose a multi-site community service hub in central Oakland, expanding the functions of OPDC to advance formal and informal learning in the neighborhood. Shinue and Fangyu offer a redevelopment of the Gulf Research Building site along the Boulevard of the Allies as a community service hub with a new mixed-use building centered around a courtyard. The hub will serve as a catalyst for development as well as stimulate investment and improve resilience in the community. The community service hub at West Oakland at the corner, already a center for food in the neighborhood, is intended to become a part of the neighborhood-wide resource sharing network. On behalf of our team, Aniket and myself will be presenting our proposal for a community service hub at Frazier Field. Food for thought, a catalyst for South Oakland. Frazier Field, also known as Dan Marino Field, named after the South Oakland resident who became a renowned NFL football quarterback, is the only large open space in the neighborhood. Located along Frazier Street at the southern edge of the neighborhood, it is bounded on other sides by the steep hillside slopes of Panther Hollow and the Monongahela River. Frazier Field currently hosts a front office field house, baseball court, basketball court, and kids' play area. The courts and play area bring in children after school hours, as well as college students. South Oakland Neighborhood Group, or SONG, hosts their weekly meetings at the field house.
We assessed South Oakland's current strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The strengths are: the neighborhood has a dense residential fabric with unique affordable housing, on-street parking, and one-way managed traffic. Historically home to mill workers, it continues to host immigrant families and their communities. There is the availability of large open space such as Frazier Field in the neighborhood, along with access to Shenley Park within walking distance. The forested hillside wrapping around the southern edge and a few parklets in the neighborhood add to its appeal. There are community serving organizations operating in the neighborhood such as SONG, OPDC, Oakcliffe, and CSHs. The Boulevard of Allies divides South Oakland from the rest of the Oakland, but it also protects the neighborhood from Oakland's more developed areas, making it more private. The weaknesses are: 77% of the existing real estate is absentee owned. Only 23% of the neighborhood properties are owned owner occupied, compared to the city average of 46.7%. There is a lack of last mile connectivity to access the public transportation system on the Boulevard of Allies, where only 3 buses 58, 65, and 93 run, and at a sparse frequency of 45 to 60 minutes. South Oakland is a food desert with poor access to fresh food and healthy produce. The nearest food service grocery stores are across the river on the south side. Online produce delivery from big box stores is unsustainable and expensive. Community organizations are not mutually exclusive, which can lead to political problems about splitting authority for decisions. The opportunities. Utilizing the 100,000 square feet available at Frazier Field in a multi-purpose manner to serve South Oakland neighborhood optimally across generations. Creating a resilient edge condition and managing the hillside slope to create walking trails and open up the southern edge of South Oakland to riverside views. Building strong neighborhood social networks with existing operating organizations and resource sharing with universities and institutional partners. Improving the public space of Boulevard of Allies as a visible frontage for South Oakland. And the threats. Growing trend of absentee ownership in the neighborhood, with more families moving out to seek quieter, cleaner neighborhoods, with better parking policy and a more resilient student population coming in. Vulnerability to hillside slopes to erosion and landslides, as recently observed with the collapse of Swinburne Bridge. South Oakland will benefit from a community hub that is a self-governed multi-purpose facility, providing access to fresh produce, building social networks, collective knowledge, and encouraging local enterprise, while improving last-mile connectivity and urban quality in the neighborhood. Our proposal is centered around 4 activities: grow, dine, learn, and play. From visiting Garfield Community Farm in Pittsburgh, we learned about its organizational structure and operational model. We also learned about soil remediation, spring and fall planting cycles, the variety of fruits and vegetables that can be grown in Pittsburgh climate. Our visit to the farm informed us about the programmatic components that formulate a community garden, in addition to the productive farmland. The Neighborhood Academy in Berlin operates as a self-organized open platform for urban and rural knowledge sharing, cultural practice, and activism. A space for community gardening and hands-on events brings like-minded people from many backgrounds together in conversations that contribute to bottom-up community transformation through awareness building and collective learning. We envision Frazier Field Community Service Hub will serve the South Oakland neighborhood east of Bates Streets to cater primarily to 750 households in this area. In alignment with Grow, Dine, Learn, and Play, our proposal extends Frazier Field's activities along 5 key areas: cooperative, agriculture, enterprise, education, and recreation. Our proposal expands the existing facilities on the site to an improved front office, a meeting room, workshop, classroom space, daycare facility, community kitchen, and dining, a bioshelter and a chicken coop, apiary along with a small grocery store, seed bank, and lockers. To accomplish this multi-use agenda requires reorganizing existing site functions. The project envisions a total of 8,600 square feet to build area, along with an intensified plan following the model of Garfield Community Farm for the use of over 90,000 square feet of land in accordance with permaculture principles.
The operational model for this community service hub chalks out the sources for raw material, funding, labor, and income through local and global partnerships. The key, we believe, is to build on South Oakland Neighborhood Group's existing board as an umbrella organization that encourages and manages 3 kinds of neighborhood cooperatives under its leadership: South Oakland Neighborhood Food Cooperative, South Oakland Neighborhood Housing Cooperative, and the South Oakland Neighborhood Mutual Aid Cooperative. These cooperatives will allow the community to build collective wealth, knowledge, resource, and ensure investments remain local within the neighborhood. It will build voice, advocacy, and aid co-action during adverse conditions. As part of our proposals for the Community Service Hub, we have envisioned a 20-year model of change and visualized that phase-wise projection in 2, 5, 10, and 20 years from now through a monthly newsletter publication, Sing Along with Song. In this stage, we see the residents of South Oakland coming together through multiple events hosted at Frazier Field by the Song Group, such as basketball tournaments, pet meets, book clubs, and movie screenings. These events lay an impetus for discussions on the needs of the neighborhood and mobilize co-action to begin talks with the city, universities, and organizations on these goals in a 2-year period. In the first phase between 2023 and 2025, Song hosts multiple community events bringing students and residents together. Song builds associations for discussion with the city, Pitt, River Life, Sestily Nursery, and Phipps Conservatory. Community tree planting is initiated on the Boulevard of the Allies and neighborhood streets. Renter-occupied to owner-occupied housing in this stage stands at 77 to 23%. In the next phase, we see that the community has grown closer. Residents and students engage actively in the neighborhood's pursuits. The existing Song Board brings on new members in alignment with the neighborhood goals and leads the way. Quality of the neighborhood's public realm is enhanced, beginning with reconstruction of the Boulevard of the Allies and neighborhood streets. Last mile connectivity is addressed with the city, bringing in shared mobility. In the second phase between 2025 and 2028, the Song Board brings on new members into a third of its team to help start cooperatives. The South Oakland Neighborhood Housing Cooperative is formulated as a subsidiary of Song. Negotiations begin in the neighborhood with 250 absentee owners to acquire housing. Hillside slope remediation begins with multiple rounds of manual de-weeding and native seed dispersal with the city and community volunteers. Formation of public pathway at the hillside edge begins. Boulevard of the Allies is reconstructed. Designated parking is introduced to South Oakland streets. The city also brings in shared mobility with a neighborhood shuttle running on a Dawson Ward loop and cycle sharing stands with POGO hedge. Crowdsourced funding to set up Frazier Farm begins. In the third stage, we believe that negotiations with Pitt make headway to address growing student occupancy in the neighborhood with a decentralized approach to university housing. The South Oakland Neighborhood Housing Cooperative continues to grow and local enterprises emerge, springing out of the produce from the community garden at Frazier Farm. In the third phase between 2028 and 2033, Pitt decentralizes housing across Squirrel Hill and Shadyside neighborhoods in addition to Oakland. The South Oakland Neighborhood Food and Mutual Aid Cooperatives are established under the Song Board. Neighborhood Housing Cooperative now runs and owns 350 properties in the neighborhood, with renter-occupied to owner-occupied housing currently at 50 to 50%. Local enterprise in South Oakland sees a boost beginning on the Boulevard of the Allies. Frazier Farm supplies fresh food produce to West Oakland Food Pantry and others. Ownership of EVs are on the rise. Charging stations introduced to South Oakland streets. The city of Pittsburgh initiates a vehicle tax policy at this stage to encourage EVs with subsidies and tax benefits while increasing taxes on non-EV vehicles. In the final stage, we see South Oakland as a thriving neighborhood with a strong sense of community and local economy through its 3 cooperatives. The public realm has drastically improved with a more pedestrian and environment-friendly interventions. In the final phase between 2033 and 2043, food production at Frazier Field is maximized. A completed hillside pedestrian trail gets connected with the river Esplanade through the Bate Steps and is integrated with parks and parklets. Mobility in the neighborhood encourages an increase in the number of non-car commuters, with residents adopting walking, cycling, and taking the bus or the shuttle. Neighborhood cooperatives continue to grow and acquire more housing, strengthen community food networks, and mutual responsibility. Through cooperative building over the years, home ownership is made accessible and affordable to those in need, and a higher than average ownership occupancy can be seen at this stage. Rented occupied to owner occupied housing is at 35 to 65%, which is remarkable relative to the city. For our proposal of the Boulevard of the Allies, the right-of-way is reorganized to accommodate a wide green median in between left turn lanes, introduce a curb landscape, and further a raised unidirectional cycle track and footpath on both sides, separated by flexible bollards. In due course of time, shade from the tree canopies will cover its entire length. The street improvements proposal for Frazier Street would be typical of all neighborhood streets, having right-of-way ranging from 14 to 16 meters. There will be one row of designated parking on either side of the street, with residents not having to park more than 20 meters away from their homes. Pedestrian crossings are marked out with an edge green and expand to create a shuttle bus bay with seating. In 20 years, we envision that as the community gradually grows apart from its dependency on the automobile, with well-established alternatives to opt for, these designated parking spots become bus shelters, EV charging stations, cycle parking stands, and neighborhood planting beds.
Frazier Field is also developed in phases in parallel to neighborhood resource building. In the first 2 years, Frazier Field House is renovated and expanded to host a front office, pantry, conference room, toilets, and lockers. Daycare services are temporarily hosted in the renovated field house. Baseball practice pitch is re-leveled and netted. An outdoor education area and picnic lawn are laid out. In the next 3 years, kids' play area is relocated so that play and gym equipments for adults can be introduced. Basketball court is relocated and doubles up as a futsal court with seating on 2 sides. Bioremediation of soil patch-wise begins. Independent raised beds are developed. Composting begins on site. In the next 5 years, bioswale and rainwater reservoir is built. Learning and daycare center developed along with community kitchen, dining, and open-air theater. Bioshelter, hydroponics, and aquaculture are set up alongside a grocery store, seed bank, and apiary. In 20 years, Frazier Field Community Service Hub is fully operational in the service area and beyond. The design proposal for the site accommodates all of the productive farmland, bioshelter, and buildings with solar roofs oriented along the north-south direction. A bioswale and a series of small rainwater harvesting ponds run along the site contours down to culminate at the hillside edge in a reservoir. The expanded field house gives way to the baseball practice pitch with the futsal basketball courts at the back. An area next to the field house hosts raised beds rented by the community residents. A vehicular entrance is provided for loading and unloading of goods. The learning center sits in a clearing of the fruit orchard with a partially outdoor dining, kids' play area, and adult outdoor gym on the site. Platforms to pause and store goods or equipments temporarily in the farm meet at a central demonstration deck and composting unit. The apiary sits in a secluded area to protectively raise queen bees. A picnic area open-air theatre, and a peripheral walking pathway create a pedestrian trail connected to the hillside slope. The proposal envisions construction in local brick with structural framework in cross-laminated timber.
Food for thought, a catalyst for South Oakland. Thank you.
The Herron Hill Community Hub is a multifaceted concept. One unique function is celebrating Pittsburgh's water infrastructure. The location of the site is at the intersection of Center Avenue and Ditridge Street in the upper part of North Oakland. Center Avenue is a prominent east-west connection corridor in Pittsburgh, and due to this, the site and building have a high visibility. The buildings on site include the main pumping station, which is still functional, and the defunct laboratory at the rear. The pumping station supplies clean water to Oakland and the neighborhoods around it. The pumping station building, built in 1896, was a technological step forward involving innovative water analysis. Herron Hill was constructed in the late 1800s and was designed by a prominent architect, William Frazier, in the classical revival style, which incorporates Greek and Roman elements. Both buildings have stood at the original location since their construction and continue to play a key role in the water distribution system of Pittsburgh. The laboratory, although defunct, was crucial in advancing the water and paving analysis for the city in the last 60 years. The station mainly pumped water to the higher elevations such as the Hill District and Squirrel Hill. Currently, the site is extremely contoured, underused and ignored, covered with overgrowth and almost unseen. Although it was made viable for a historical landmark status, very few residents of Oakland and even fewer of Pittsburgh know about the buildings. Due to the covering up of windows of the building and the abandonment of the lab, the site remains underused, with only the PWSA and maintenance staff visiting it from time to time. The northern rear portion of the site is covered with overgrowth and remains a dormant space with the potential for change. Large tree canopies in this area serve as a backdrop to the structures as well. Historically, the location is also significant because of the opportunity to connect neighborhoods separated by topography and demographics. Northern Oakland and Upper Hill, towards the northwest, have been segregated by geography and class throughout the last century, and the impact of segregation exists today. Although separated through geography and administrative boundaries, this historical infrastructure network has connected neighborhoods around it by supplying water for decades. This could potentially be an asset in connecting these neighborhoods for the future. North Oakland has boundaries with prominent neighborhoods and houses important landmarks. Zooming out slightly, we see that North Oakland shares distinct boundaries with the Hill District, Bloomfield, and Shadyside in different ways. The steep terrain serves as an edge between the Hill District and North Oakland, whereas infrastructure, namely the railway line on the northeast and Neville Street on the east, act as boundaries between Bloomfield and Shadyside with the neighborhood respectively. This characteristic is unique to North Oakland compared to the rest of Oakland, allowing for a more transient and kinetic nature to the neighborhood. This lynch map provides a snapshot of our interpretation of the neighborhood in terms of its elements. Center Avenue is the spine that binds the neighborhoods together. The site is accessed through the east-west corridor of Center Avenue, which allows for great connectivity from the surrounding neighborhoods. This also has active public transit connecting it to other areas of Pittsburgh. North Oakland has a sufficient population for the proposal of a CSH, but due to its extended shape, the walkability to the site is possible from adjacent neighborhoods. North Oakland is a dense neighborhood in terms of demographics compared to the ones around it, and has a total population of just under 10,000 as per the US Census. This data, combined with the population statistics of the surrounding neighborhoods, justified the location in terms of a 0.5-mile walkshed for a community service hub. The density of population is mainly due to the presence of institutions and proximity to downtown. North Oakland has a high percentage of experienced citizens. The same area also has a high percentage of citizens over the age of 60. We learned from our interview with resident Kathleen Gallagher that many of the high-rise buildings have residents who have returned to North Oakland after decades. The percentages clearly indicate the difference compared to the rest of Pittsburgh. During our first walk through the site and neighborhood, we found several recurring patterns throughout and noticed few key missing elements. This formed an important base for our study and design logic. We then had to analyze available data to support these observations. North Oakland mainly comprises of high-rise buildings without balconies. When we furthered our analysis of building data, we found that more than half of the buildings in North Oakland were above 60 feet and without any private balcony or open spaces. This again showed us how necessary an open accessible space is for the neighborhood. The neighborhood has heterogeneous urban grain but lacks accessible public green space. Many of the high rises in the neighborhood combined with the older residential units and institutional buildings lend themselves to a varied urban grain. Although the map on the left shows that there is plenty of open space, most of these voids are parking lots or unused spaces. With the demographic density that exists in the neighborhood, there is a lack of accessible open and green space for the community. North Oakland is a densely developed area that can support a community service hub and provide the amenities the neighborhood lacks. The site for the community hub is owned by the city and hence would be a strength to the intervention. The site is also highly visible and has historical relevance. However, there is high-speed traffic around the site which reduces pedestrian access. North Oakland has a variety of commercial and retail businesses in the neighborhood which could potentially strengthen the project in terms of its connectivity. The neighborhood also has a large demographic of transient student population. Along with permanent residents, the hub could cater to a diverse set of end users. Based on the SWOT analysis, the project has 5 design goals: to create accessible community spaces in the neighborhood, to provide flexible modular spaces for local businesses, to strengthen the historical narrative of the site, to improve pedestrian networks in the neighborhood, to facilitate equity of space through accessibility to conveniences. Our design strategy is based on 3 main elements: a neighborhood nucleus, modular pocket spaces, and reimagining parking lots. The strategy for the community hub of North Oakland is to create a well-connected node in the neighborhood, which also can be accessed by surrounding areas. The diagram shows our primary intervention areas, which are defined by the access corridors. We envision this intervention being a catalyst of change and allowing for varied modes of interaction, access, and activity. Highlighting the infrastructural connection between the North Oakland and Hill District Reservoir would bridge two disconnected communities, while adding the bicycle path along the abandoned green corridor down Neville Street would provide a vibrant park and green space for the community. Towards the south of the site, we envision parking lots being converted into vibrant spaces which stitch the urban fabric together. Based on this strategy, we've looked at a few precedents around the world for our inspiration. These precedents and analysis lend themselves to a vibrant program. The Museum of Water Infrastructure would situate and locate the site on the map. The lab would also house a community meeting and dining space, which would give the neighborhood a much needed accessible space for the exchange of ideas and thoughts for the future of the neighborhood. The admin headquarters for the space would be housed in the main building. This would also house office spaces for the PWSA and DPW. The rear of the site houses a large public space consisting of an amphitheater, a children's play area, and modular spaces made up of scaffolding. These scaffolding structures would allow for a variety of functions such as community gardens, local markets, and activity zones. The parking lots on either side of the site would be transformed into community spaces over the phases. The scaffolding would be placed on the parking lots while retaining the parking, and the modular spaces would house a variety of functions. The proposal aims to take shape over the course of 20 years with phase-wise interventions. During the first phase, the lab building is redeveloped and reused as a museum and community meeting room. The main building is revamped on the inside to create office spaces for the PWSA, DPW, and the admin of the community hub. After 5 years, scaffolding is purchased to create these community spaces at the rear of the site and the parking lots on either side. These flexible spaces could be used as markets, allotment gardens for the residents, activity spaces for experienced citizens, and smaller spaces for exhibitions. Safe and slower pedestrian crossings are created along Center Avenue for improving access to the site. After 15 years, air rights of the parking lots towards the south of the site are purchased and these spaces are occupied to create multi-use community zones. Another important intervention in this phase is the development of the connection between the main site and the reservoir in the Hill District. This would be done by revitalizing the existing set of steps which connect Bigelow Boulevard to the terraces on top of the Hill District. After 20 years, these parking lots are converted into community zones with smaller permanent functions such as libraries and fitness zones to create a vibrant network in North Oakland. Center Avenue is made more pedestrian friendly to create access to the green corridor at Neville Street. With the introduction of docking stations, the abandoned corridor is made into a lively ecological strip which would promote cycling and walking for North Oakland and the neighborhoods around it. The model of change for the 5 phases is rooted in the community's response and contribution to the project. The project aims to adopt a model of change logic, with each phase driven by the successes and milestones of the previous one. We envision the process as one of participation, with the formation of a neighborhood trust or organization which would act as a bridge between the city and the community. The city-owned site would have to be leased by the organization on a long term as the first phase. The defunct lab and rear of the pumping station would be occupied and initiate the process. The scaffolding is introduced as an idea to create flexible loose fit spaces which provide a wide range of opportunities to the community. Over the course of 15 years, we envision the scaffolding taking shape across the neighborhoods on the parking lots with the purchase of air rights, an active walkable connection to the reservoir, provision of a docking station, and street improvements along the connecting corridors. We believe this incremental model would allow the community to experiment and understand the project as it evolves. A neighborhood organization would be responsible for the development and management of the community service hub. For this approach to be truly successful, we believe that the management would have to be diverse with multiple stakeholders contributing to the project. For this, we envision the creation of a neighborhood trust or umbrella organization. The organization would have a majority representation on the board from the community, private developers mainly for the parking lots, government officials from the DPW, the city, and the PWSA, and finally the institutions of CMU and UPIT. Bringing the institutions would be crucial in creating opportunities between the community and the student population, and also mainly because of their ownership of few of the parking lots. The parking lots account for the majority of the open space, and we envision them being transformed over the 20 years. They occupy a huge chunk of open space, and utilizing them as an asset to stitch the urban fabric together, while activating these barren zones, would create zones that the community could inhabit and transform. These spaces would be experimental during the initial phases, with the occupants and community developing the space towards a more permanent structure. Scaffolding would allow flexibility and modularity of space and function as the backdrop to the main building. The temporal nature of the scaffolding means that it would be lightweight, easy to transport, and could be used for multiple functions such as exhibition spaces, local markets, community gardens, performance spaces, and fitness zones. On a larger scale as seen in this diagram, the scaffolding would stitch the fabric of North Oakland together without disturbing the existing function of parking initially. While we do wish for a more pedestrianized network, we recognize that this cannot happen immediately. We envision the framework to work in tandem with the parking lots to make them more vibrant and multi-use. During the last phase, with the success of these modules, we envision the conversion of these temporary spaces into permanent structures based on community feedback. Bridging the fabric together through this framework would form a multi-use community network throughout North Oakland. The modularity of these spaces allows for a multitude of functions and form an inclusive built system. We believe the idea of relocalization can occur by providing the community with an equitable, accessible system which can change as per necessity. We envision grocery stores, cafes, activity zones, and exhibition stalls coming up as per necessity. By allowing for a shared or ownership model, these pods could be rented out or even leased out for longer periods of time. The parking lots would be transformed as multi-use spaces and contribute to the enhancement of the community. These parking lots are reimagined as canvases which allow for the loose fit model to take shape, with a variety of functions coming in as per need. By retaining the parking, we look at this as an experiment which allows the community to learn through space utilization and flexibility without disturbing the current purpose. Over the timeline of 20 years, we hope that this system helps bridge various other disconnected blocks together and provide for local businesses to flourish. We envision the creation of a community hub that combines infrastructure, history, and economic opportunities for the bottom-up production of culture in North Oakland. By connecting North Oakland to its surrounding neighborhoods, it would create a larger network of accessible public spaces. The pumping station would also be rejuvenated with a new identity, and this could serve as a template for the other reuse projects in the neighborhood and even in Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Hello, this project is The Place at Zulema by Shreya and Sayam. The Place at Zulema takes Zulema Park and its surrounding areas, the Zulema District, as a multifunctional community center for local economic growth and community engagement. The project will suggest a new community service hub and following commercial, business, and residential district over a 20-year period. Located on the boundary of South and Central Oakland, the site sits at the heart of both neighborhoods and is an important crossroad for Oakland. Surrounding the Zulema district is a largely residential fabric. There are 2,000 households in South Oakland and 1,000 households in Central that offer the site an approximate population of 9,000 people to cater to. This fabric also allows a stable income for the project, which could sustain the hub and the future developments. Estimating a contribution of $15 per person, it would give us an economic flow of $100,000 per month. While the area of South Oakland and Central Oakland is expensive, the immediate service area for the community service hub is bounded and already defined by the various geographic and commercial features. For example, UPMC bounds the west, Shenley on the east, Highway on the south, and the Pitt campus on the north. This boundary helps to focus the study area and gives plausible goals for the project. Zooming into the immediate site, centered out Zulema Park, where we will be placing the new community service hub, it is largely surrounded by residential fabric and a few UPMC buildings. Although South and Central Oakland are prominent neighborhoods, the population surrounding Zulema District lacks a service that provides for not only the essential everyday needs, but also entertainment and work. This diagram showing the 15-minute walkable radius from existing services illustrates the lack of access to various amenities in the Zulema District area. Therefore, developing Zulema as a new center will offer a new walkshed that will be able to tie all existing walksheds together. In this diagram, the dark black line illustrates the boundary this proposal will directly tackle for its 20-year development plan. There are many features with varying function, size, and impact within the boundary of the Zulema district. Large components such as UPMC and the Boulevard of the Allies draws in the majority of the traffic to the site. Although the site has various weaknesses and threats, such as its heavy dependency of vehicles and the lack of diverse functions, it also holds great potential as the tightly knitted residential fabric, proximity to large institutions, and strategic location is adapted to support financial and time-extensive changes. From the carefully analyzed strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the Zulema district, we began to extract some of the most important factors that prompt questions and problems that are essential to tackle in order to achieve our goal of creating multifunctional space for a more vital, diverse, and holistic community. Some of these curated elements include the central location, large residential population, lack of ownership and community, proximity to Forbes and Fifth Commercial Corridor, strong presence of major institutions, and its location on the junction of Bates and Boulevard. These characteristics of the sites was then translated into problems, which includes it being in the service area void, large transient population, and the lack of economically circular loop. Additional problems include the lack of stability and resilience, the lack of access by foot or public transportation. So then the next step of creating this process thread was to align the problems with specific goals for the site. An example of a thread would be, because the site holds a large student residential population, the majority of the population is transient, therefore lacks local residential ownership, and the essential goals are then to retain the population by providing economic and business opportunities. These goals then become important hints for which new programs we should be introducing to the Zulema district. Programs that can possibly better these problems include the incubator for startup businesses, commercial frontage, co-working spaces, and community event spaces. In addition, conditions for major roads must be modified to incorporate pedestrian access and public transportation. Following ideas from Jane Jacobs' Economy of the Cities, and to help further root our project of the neighborhood, we started to pin our various local businesses that had potential of becoming collaborators to the community service hub. One of the ways existing businesses and institutions can be incorporated would be, for example, partnering with Monroe Clubhouse Child Care Center or the Children's Center of Pittsburgh, both in close proximity to our site, in order to initially establish a successful business structure and then to provide services lacking from these existing centers, such as daycares outside of normal hours or after-school programs. Multiple versions of these connections, including the collaboration with other community service hubs, when seen on a larger scale, can strengthen the performance of newer programs and eventually create a stronger, fully closed loop that will enhance economic and community vitality. The community service hub and its district, through the varied programs, focuses to become the third place, a familiar spot, especially within one neighborhood, where you can connect with others, known and unknown, over a shared interest or activity. The diversity of programs will change the site into becoming a one-stop solution for many daily household needs and trips, but also a space for organic community interactions and synergetic development. The community service hub, which is the heart and catalyst of the whole district, will include a mixture of childcare, incubator, and co-working spaces. The spaces in the hub itself can range from meeting spaces to working station and from PlayStation to classrooms for the childcare facility. It will require a built-up area of approximately 10,000 square feet. To better understand how these three functions can run in coexistence, we studied an existing facility, Nido. Something that was very unique and different about Nido's business model was that they offered hourly subscriptions instead of monthly or annually. They also had volunteers who worked in childcare part who had access to the workspaces during their off-shift hours so they could expand their personal scope. We began constructing our own business model informed by Nido's, a mix of one-time payments and subscription system for the incubator, co-working spaces, and childcare can establish enough revenue to fund the different expenses of this community service hub. Additionally, these revenues from the community service hub programs will become important starting funds to support the growth of the complete district programs. At the district scale, businesses will have similar models of revenue and expenses as a community service hub to fully sustain itself. For example, UPMC, a local pharmacy, and a new biomedical engineering research lab from the incubator at the community service hub can start to collaborate and attract necessary target clients for each other. To manage and regulate a collection of these functions will require presence of a unified organizational institution. Zulema Inc., a nonprofit organization comprised of representatives elected by members of the community, will be leading authority. The large organization will be paying the community, who will then be giving them acreage on the street to expand their businesses in a planned manner. The system will allow for the district to become a node of business services, meeting places, healthcare services, events, and more. It'll further enhance economic opportunities for people by increasing exposure, providing business support and infrastructure, and advertising. This will allow for the diversity in the area where everyone has something or others to gain from. Zulema Inc., a nonprofit organization that will run the district, will be made up of 18 members from various groups. However, most of them will be from residents and residential groups and organizations to allow for direct participation. The president would also be elected every 4 years, just like the rest of the committee, and always be a resident. As the project develops, the Zulema Inc. will expand to meet the needs. It'll initially start with collecting funds and using them to begin construction and creating a group of people to work in the community service hub, to ultimately being the higher authority that will be looking over the various smaller committees that will be responsible for the day-to-day running while keeping the count of the financials of the district. From there, moving into our design phase, we listed down a few project goals we felt were essential, breaking them into 3 categories of building, road treatment, and transit. In the building, our aim was to create an active street wall for the site, which includes many functions that will attract all groups of people to the site and activate the entire district while allowing economic development as well. For our form, having decided to create active street walls and allowing them to activate the space as well, we looked into the precedent to understand how it could be done. We looked into Road DTLA project. It taught us the value of spaces like restaurants, cafe, outdoor seating spaces, and unprogrammed spaces in the middle. It showed us how people occupy free, open central spaces as they deem fit. For the road treatment, we focused on making the boulevard safer for pedestrians. We aimed to provide a median and add tree cover along all of it to make Boulevard truly a boulevard. For Zulema Street, our goal is to make it a pedestrian only and reroute the traffic to Coulthard Avenue. For the transit, we aim to add bike lanes to the boulevard that will help connect it with more modes of transportation, while also tapping into the transit system that will also connect other community service hubs across Oakland. Taking all of this into consideration, we moved into the actual design phase of our project. We broke down our project into 4 phases to ensure that each new program change is accepted and running successfully well enough to financially support the following phases. Phase 1 will be 0 to 2 years, Phase 2, 2 to 5, Phase 3, 5 to 10, and Phase 4, 10 to 20 years. In Phase 1, the very beginning of the project, it will be funded by the City of Pittsburgh, local institutions, citizens, and from OPDC in order to primarily tackle building this community service hub, closing down Zulema Street to be used as a public event space, and substituting the car lane on the Boulevard of the Allies to a bike lane. Here you can see that the community service hub is becoming a public face at the east end of Zulema Park, while also serving as a shared office space, childcare center, as well as an incubator for new and existing businesses. Ideally, these 3 functional changes in Phase 1 will increase connectivity and visits to the site through the modified traffic system and retain student population and hopefully integrate them into the existing local community, which will increase the community gatherings and interactions. In addition, the entrepreneuring opportunities provided by the Community Service Hub will promote the community's overall economic growth and circularity. Changes in Phase 1 will stimulate and fund the changes in Phase 2. Phase 2 aims to develop a new commercial and business building structure and a new grocery store located in the Easley's building, in addition to more developments in the Community Service Hub, Zulema Park, and the Boulevard of the Allies. With the help of existing stakeholders, but also larger agents such as tech companies and Giant Eagles and Walnut Capital, Phase 2 can be possible. Changes in Phase 2 is not only limited to the physical boundaries of Zulema Park, but starts to develop a surrounding district area as well. The key changes in Phase 2 not only is the continuation of achieving goals in Phase 1, but it will also include promoting local business ownerships, which can become the starting point of Pittsburgh-based large industries, and both retain and attract a stable residential population. Revenue from renting out commercial spaces in Phase 2 will allow larger developmental changes in the following phases. In Phase 3, a new residential and commercial mixed-use building will extend the commercial front and increase housing for the workers of Zulema Center. In addition to the new multi-complex building developments, the addition of bus stops and increased access of public transport is one of the key changes in Phase 3. Changes in this phase will not only retain the transient population and increase local residential ownership, but it will also start to tie in the initial goal of live, work, and play, creating a vital, diverse, and holistic community. The economic change model of Phase 4 is somewhat similar to Phase 3 in that the space for residential, commercial, and business continues to grow. However, the key difference shown in Phase 4 is that now the Community Service Hub will transform its function. The Community Service Hub, previously a shared office space and incubator for new businesses, will become a public library with access to technology to serve the community. This will provide increased resources and accesses to information and technology, giving back to the community. Here is a final look of the completed project in 10 years with its various and diverse programs. The place at Zulema provides a great transportation access, but also has the ability to hold multiple functions and events, creating unique and memorable experiences to the Oakland community. Lastly, and most importantly, this proposal recognizes the various unexpected challenges of this time and financially expensive project. Therefore, the project experiments with hypothetical yet realistic scenarios, exploring both successful and unsuccessful cases and unexpected events with butterfly effects. Preparing for unexpected results and directions minimizes the loss and allows for the flexibility. For example, this diagram shows whether or not our community service hub is successful or unsuccessful, the following steps in order to achieve our final goal of a vital, diverse, and holistic community. That was our project at Zulema Park, and thank you so much.
Hello all, I am Rituja Badwe, and I, along with my partner and cohort mate, Nihan Liu, present to you a proposal for educational center as a hub in central Oakland. The neighborhood of central Oakland has a very unique sense of place. It is the meeting place of large institutions like UPMC and University of Pittsburgh on the north side and the Carnegie Museum of Art to the east. A low but dense residential area lies on the south and the west end of the neighborhood. The Forbes and Fifth Corridor from the north edge of the neighborhood, and it is lined by the vast Shenley Park on the east edge. A thorough SWOT analysis of central Oakland revealed the following. Its strength was seen as a diverse neighborhood in terms of people and functions. It also hosted a very local business district. It was a host to two very important historic districts in the city of Pittsburgh, and its proximity to Forbes and Fifth was a huge plus. A disproportionate student population and owner population created a lack of discipline. The lack of access to the Shenley Park due to the terrain and the underserved local business at the Atwood Street in central Oakland were observed as weaknesses. The diversity of population and functions and the presence of hillside and a well-connected network of internal roads was seen as the opportunity in the neighborhood. The constantly decreasing percentage of housing ownership is observed as a threat. Central Oakland has a remarkably diverse population in terms of age, background, occupation, and languages. The Oakland 2025 plan suggests introducing a new educational resource into the neighborhood. This proposal considers both programmed activities and physical urban improvements. It is based on the concept of community service hub that was presented in the Department of City Planning's Oakland Plan. On the screen, you can see the 5 goals that are parallel to the Oakland's 2025 plan that we are trying to incorporate in our community service hubs in the various activities that we are designing for the hub to serve the community. The purpose of the Community Education Center would be an expanded function of Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. It is a twofold function. The first one would be to create a facility with spaces for both formal and informal learning for all age groups. The second part would be to provide a local network of other community functions that improve the livability of Central Oakland. The formal and informal learning activities could include creche, daycare for toddlers, higher school career development programs and workshops for the high school kids, tech support and tech training for the elderly. The community functions that would improve the livability would include business and finance workshops, which could be in collaboration with the existing local business district, libraries, bike repairing stations, and other allied activities that we will see further in the presentation. The design for the Community Education Center is envisioned in 4 phases. In the first 2 years, a survey of needs and talents throughout the Central Oakland will be conducted to create an asset map. This will help us determine what kind of community function activities we want to propose in the neighborhood. Also, work will begin within OPDC to expand its partnerships with institutions in the neighborhood. This will help us improve our scope of activities that we can host. Third, a suitable site where the Community Education Center can be placed is located. This is the site is currently suggested using a parking lot that is owned by UPMC along the Senate Street. This is a view of how the educational center building would be envisioned. In the 5 years plan, the Oakland Plan anticipates that public space and housing improvements are already in progress. The Community Education Center activities will be initiated in the existing spaces while the construction on new buildings is getting underway. The center is located where it mends the seam between the institutional and the residential fabric. Support for alternative transportation, including new bike lanes on the Forbes, will be provided by a modular cycle repair and renting station. This is a first prototype that can be eventually replicated throughout Oakland. As a part of 10-year goal, efforts to increase localization in business development will be launched. The business district on Forbes Avenue, as well as the local business district of Central Oakland on the Atwood Street, will be supported by intensified marketing and monthly street markets. Also, a sustainability resource center will be initiated in collaboration with CMU and PIT, and educational programs within the Oakland Avenue Fund will encourage community engagement. In the 4th phase, at the 20-year planning horizon, the Community Education Center is a fully operational facility that has enabled Central Oakland residents to find better employment and enrich their lives. Local initiatives has led to hillside remediation. A fund for the maintenance of city steps is in place. OPDC's expanded role in the neighborhood and its partner with People's Oakland has produced a foster home for the children and the elderly. The new facility provides not only a variety of learning spaces inside, but outdoor open spaces, as well as functions at different levels to serve the community. As we can see that the central building of Educational Hub is supported by various allied activities that has come as a result of the talent assess map of the neighborhood. We can see that we are looking at a bike renting and training station that can help the community and increase single car usage, at least within the neighborhood. And Oakland Avenue Farm, which is a which is a program that is in place already along with the UPIT students, is expanded to the community, and it is increased in terms of its scale with respect to having functions like a tool bank or a food bank or a training center, training workshops, where it teaches the people in the community to grow their own plants. A community library can be in collaboration with the two institutions that are a part of the Central Oakland itself. And the cafe is an extension of the local business district, which could also be a very good extension to the library that is being proposed as a part of the design proposal. This is a view of how these small affiliated functions, along with the central building of the educational hub, will function in the neighborhood. Now let us look at how the central education hub is coming up in terms of its form, in terms of its context. So as we can see that it is clearly located on the UPMC parking lot that is currently existing. It is almost on the transition seam of two very different typologies of urban fabrics. One is a very high mass, high rise commercial fabric, and on the other side lies a very low rise residential fabric. And the response to context should be in a way where it interacts well with both these typologies while creating a strong identity for the community. The parking lot is very well connected on all three sides, making it a perfect place for a community service hub, wherein you want more and more people to interact with it, have a very seamless relationship with the context. As a precedence, a space with multiple levels of outdoor and indoor open spaces that are flexible in terms of functions is looked at, which we have tried to replicate in our physical form of the building. The new facility provides not only a variety of learning spaces inside, but also outdoor spaces at different levels. The facilities include cafe, retail, and restaurants that can line along the commercial street, which will give them an opportunity to promote their businesses. Children's play area, roof gardens, gardens at different levels for hosting different kind of activities for the children and for the elderly are designed. And it also hosts administrative functions like offices, classrooms, larger halls to conduct workshops and seminars for all the activities and allied activities that are going on in the hub. The plaza is lined along the Semple Street, and it serves as a large, welcoming, opening space to all the users in the community, giving it a sense that the space belongs to them, the community, the people. The programs in the buildings are such that they attract people of all age groups for learning activities during weekdays, evenings, and the weekends. We can clearly see that the form of the building is such that it steps down towards the residential fabric, whereas an interactive and a very engaging facade lines along the commercial edge. This sort of forms a very well connection with both the typology of fabrics that it is trying to stitch together. The building street face is reserved for cafes and shops, and as we can clearly see that they have a very, very engaging forefront that can help them in their businesses. All the spaces in the center are designed to be very flexible to accommodate a very wide range of activities. The success of the community education center will be assessed in terms of residential engagement, how many local businesses can we employ, and how we can improve their vitality in the neighborhood. How can we improve the neighborhood social connections? How are we improving the community and household self-reliance? and overall, how are we improving the neighborhood's livability while taking care of its physical environment and the sense of place that Central Oakland already offers. In the image, we can see the internal courtyard, which is a more intimate open space that can be used by the kids and toddlers for their daily activities. So this was our proposal for the Community Education Center that aims at increasing the vitality, social connections, self-reliance, and livability of the neighborhood of Central Oakland. Thank you.
The Oakcliffe neighborhood is located in the west part of South Oakland. The advantages that make Oakcliffe a good community today are the proximity to institutions, the nearby tree-covered hillsides, diverse housing, and good access from the Boulevard of the Allies. The Boulevard, one of Oakland's major traffic arteries, and bus lines pass through Oakcliffe. This small neighborhood has lots of mixed-use land along the boulevard. It also has several community-serving organizations. Oakcliffe currently has some weaknesses. Its average education level is lower than in Oakland as a whole. Home ownership rates are low. Its visible age along the boulevard is more of a back than a front. The entry points into the community are poorly defined. There is no usable green space and few street trees. Dangerous traffic conditions on the boulevard cut Oakcliffe off from the Oakland amenities. So while the boulevard is the main gateway to the community, its negative impact, such as traffic pollution and heavy fast-moving traffic, need to be mitigated. The Oakland Plan has proposed locating a hub in the Community Human Service building on Long Street. We have selected a new, larger, and more visible site, the Golf Research Building, which is near the center of a 15-minute walking circle. Since it is currently owned by UPMC, we will be leasing it for the first 2 years. In our vision, we plan to develop the following 4 dimensions of a community hub over the next 20 years. First, for workforce development, the hub will provide skill training with internships at the leading local institutions and organizations, and will promote local economic vitality by incubating local jobs. Second, our strategy will create great street environments that promote local place attachment and a sense of intimacy in the neighborhood. A program of tree planting and stewardship over 20 years will temper the neighborhood climate and improve property values. Additional public improvements include installing crosswalks and upgrade street paving. Third, we propose to improve the hillside with trails that connect it to Oakland's larger green network. By adding trails that connect the neighborhood to Shenley Park, and by improving the neighborhood street, residents will be able to enjoy the health and the recreation benefits of an overall green network. In addition, our vision includes the goal of leveraging the 15-minute neighborhood with our programs. It facilitates local access to mixed land use along the Boulevard of the Allies by fitting with the creation of Oakcliffe Square, a development that includes a community service hub, a cafe, shops, child care center, a business incubator, and affordable high-quality housing. This will create a distinctive center for Oakcliffe within the 15-minute neighborhood. These facilities and open spaces will enhance the neighborhood's sense of place. Along with better pedestrian-friendly streets, these improve walkability and connectivity throughout the community. The initial community service hub will serve as a catalyst to enhance the reinvestment and resilience of the entire community over the next 20 years. The first 2 years, beginning in 2022, are the program's first phase. The map on the left indicates where our CSH is located in the Oakcliffe community. We will lease the golf building to allow time to negotiate with UPMC on purchasing the property. First, a community management corporation will be funded with the responsibility of developing the property and organizing the delivery of community services. Then, we continue daycare services by reusing existing facilities in the building to serve both residents and local employees. We will also provide job skills training services, organize daily community activities, and open a coffee shop and thrift store. The property management company will be set up to earn revenue for community services. During this phase, our primary funding sources are OPDC, the Safety of Pittsburgh, the federal government, and other federal programs. Furthermore, since our neighborhood is eligible for a City of Pittsburgh Community Development Block Grant, we will apply for funding for our staff. Our annual budget for the 2 years, which is listed later, describe in detail how our program sustains itself financially. The Community Management Corporation will develop a greening strategy in 2023 to make the golf research building carbon neutral in 5 years, along with a 5-year plan for new development along Boulevard of the Allies by 2024. Oakcliffe Square should be able to provide at least 50 direct jobs and provide good new workplaces in the community. The diagram on the left shows 5 specific types of services and where they are located in the building. The text on the right then shows the details of the site or location for each use. The main scope of business of a community development corporation can basically be divided into 2 parts: real estate development and the provision of community services. On the left is the organizational chart of Oakcliffe Square Community Development Corporation, which has an elected board of directors whose responsibilities are primarily to guide and develop plans to bring about the community's vision. The second tier is compressed management staff. The final tier is program staff and volunteers whose primarily responsibilities for specific community service projects and work. On the right is the annual budget, which shows how we propose to make the project financially viable. We make a profit primarily through office rentals, daycare, food, and thrift stores. We understand that during the next 5 years, community human services may leave Oakcliffe, so at that time, the hub will take over these functions. On the left side are the details of how the hub will provide career services to the community in its first 2 years. Workforce services are a top priority among CSH's multiple tasks. On the right are more details on the community services mentioned earlier. The second phase will begin in 2025, during which the corporation will focus on improving the Boulevard of the Allies. This phase of funding is planned to include PennDOT, a key stakeholder. In addition, we will use the profits from the previous phase and our funds to purchase the golf building during this phase. In this phase, the Community Management Corporation will begin planning Oakcliffe Square development. They will submit a proposal to the Planning Commission at the outset for rezoning that is needed for an integrated mixed-use center. They will investigate the need for additional parking, since there are only 250 publicly permitted parking spaces in the currently community, as illustrated by the chart in the upper right corner. During this phase, the city will upgrade the boulevard by upgrading paving on both sides, planting trees, and replacing one east-to-west vehicular lane with 2 single bike lanes, one on either side. And the corporation will create a median with shade trees except where a turn lane is needed. This new street design will extend through Oakland into Shanley Park. In the third phase, the construction of Oakcliffe Square is expected to be completed. It will be a significant local business incubator that provides a wide range of employment, affordable housing, cafe, childcare, counseling, and community services. In 2030, a cycling loop will be built to construct trails along the cliffs. In the year since 2023, a substantial number of trees have already been planted and are over 20 feet tall. The image on the left shows the various components of Oakcliffe Square, except for the underground parking. One notable among this is its plan to provide a significant amount of green space and semi-open third places to improve its residents' well-being, promote the place's intimacy, and provide mixed land use. As the figures on the right indicate, different land uses are anticipated, though it's impossible to predict exactly which businesses will choose to locate here. This is an illustration of developing the green network, bicycle loop, and the trail system. The tree species were selected based on recommendations provided by the Pittsburgh Tree Ecosystem Analysis. The image on the above shows the detailed arrangement, while the flowchart on the bottom shows the work based on the Strategic Environmental Assessment, the Oakcliffe Square Plan, and the annual report to date. This is our overlook deck, built on the edge of the hillside. During our site visits, we found a section of the cliff with such great views that we wanted to develop it like the Pittsburgh Overlook. Neighborhood volunteers plant and care for trees in residential areas within the community to improve the quality of the neighborhood streets. Creating third places for the community, such as the cafe, park pavilion, and rooftop gardens, enhances the community's sense of place. Rooftop agriculture programs promote sustainable living and community engagement through food, education, and celebration. On the upper left corner is the original entrance to the Golf Research Building as it looks today, and on the right is how we would see it in 2033. The courtyard in Oakland Square, as you could see in this picture, gives neighborhood residents many reasons to be there. This image shows the renovation of the residential area adjacent to the cliff. The street is enhanced with a new walking trail near the cliff, a bike lane, and an outlook. In the fourth phase, nearly 2 decades later, the Community Management Corporation will progressively complete the renewal of the existing commercial properties along the boulevard, providing space for more local businesses and a better front door for the neighborhood. Furthermore, during this phase, the green network with a bike loop is almost complete. We are committed to delivering on the commitments in our vision, creating over 800 jobs through 4 phases and new sustainable local businesses in the community. Moreover, the revitalization has improved the quality of the environment and the connectivity within the community, and makes it a model of a 15-minute neighborhood. A collaborative circle will be created between institutions and organizations, residents, and CSH, based on 2 decades of workforce training efforts, along with the regeneration of existing commercial properties along the boulevard that will be completed by the Community Management Corporation over the last decade. More well-run local businesses will be active in the community as leading agents of the neighborhood through the incubator. This process diagram demonstrates how our projects promote odor vitality and resilience, the qualities of a good urban ecosystem. On the left side of the diagram are planned improvements by phase, while the right side shows the expected results and their impact. As we previously described, our project works through 4 main aspects: public space improvements, environmental restoration, business development, and sustainable funding. In 4 distinct phases, the project benefits from a strong local engagement and feedback loop in each phase. This means that in 20 years, no matter what happens in our community, what people come or go, Oakcliffe will be able to evolve adaptively and resiliently.